I was afraid of talking in public. Like every time I had people in front of me, I would get completely scared. And then when I realized it was all about me being obsessed with validation, not feeling sure of myself, all of these, when you start working this at a personal level, you just start taking this as something very easy. I mean, every time someone tells me now, oh, do you want to talk tomorrow to like 200 people? I'm like, amazing, thanks for the opportunity. Before I would be like, oh my God, what do I do now? How can I escape from this,
Welcome to the EcomXFactor podcast, where it's all about launching and scaling your business using sales funnels, automations, and smart marketing. And now, please welcome your host, the founder of EcomXFactor, Yaron Bin.
Hi, Francisco. How are you?
Hi, all good. And you?
I'm great. Very excited to our conversation, because when I asked you to share maybe a few topics that you want to cover, so you shared a lot of things that piqued my curiosity. I will try to steer the conversation towards there, but I'm sure it's going to be interesting anyway, wherever this goes. For the audience that doesn't know you, you mind sharing a bit about your background story?
Of course, yeah. I basically was kind of meant to be, just this technical guy. I've done some tests when I was like 9 years old, and it always showed that I had this kind of, ability to do logical thinking, and I was quite good at mathematics. And so it kind of became an assumption, through my family and people around me, I guess, that I would become a mathematician, because people used to question, oh, do you want to be a professor? I was like, no, not really. I want to, go in finance, make money. But that was kind of the assumption that with all my skills, I could become someone like successful in finance and stuff. And ultimately, in our society nowadays, everyone is kind of looking for this job that gives as much money as possible, right? And I think back then I thought exactly like that. That was my number one goal. I didn't think of anything else. And as years went by, I just did a PhD. I started working in a sports betting company, not as a trader, actually creating models for sports. But it was kind of coming from my trading background, because I have been trading, in sports betting for a long time, even during my studies. And so it was kind of two things in parallel. I was doing a PhD in mathematics. At the same time, I was already being an entrepreneur in a way, because I was investing money and all of that. And so, I had these two sides going, but I always had this in mind of, becoming as successful as possible as trader, as someone from finance world, It's always kind of the dream that people like showing the movies and stuff. But ultimately, the fun part, I think, is that, so just one thing, in 2018, I moved actually from sports betting to crypto. But again, I became a crypto trader because I had this ability. I had been, trading live for a long time. So it means that you are always able to handle kind of the emotions and in the moment decide the right thing and not be kind of rushed, because of different factors. And that's kind of, I always say that in trading, the most important part is psychological, like more than the technical skill and kind of understanding graphics, understanding information. It's really psychology, because if you make a bad decision live, things can come back at you and you can take a long time to recover. And so, I think I developed that. And that's why the transition from sports betting trader to crypto trader was not that hard. I would say, as time went by, being in blockchain.com, which is one of the biggest, references in the world in terms of crypto, it gave me also a lot of contacts. I met a lot of people. So it's kind of opened my horizons a lot more. And in 2020, in the middle of this path, I met a coach, actually, life coach. And in my perspective, it was all about becoming a good leader, more successful, more money. And actually, as soon as I started to work with him, I understood it's not really that. Like, to become a good leader, you need to be a good person, you need to be in the present, you need to learn, how to enjoy things, not just be obsessed with the goal, the end target, And as we started this process, and of course, in the first couple of months, I was still a bit clueless. I was still kind of chasing my goals obsessively and all of that. But then I started to realize, that there's a balance to be found in life, And so it's basically what happens there is that you need to really find that compromise where you are actually happy. You know what you're doing, you like what you're doing, and it doesn't mean that you're going to be less successful. It means that you're just going to enjoy more and potentially even build something bigger, because I was close to burning out many times because I was not enjoying. I was just trying to be successful, right? And so that's really kind of the main lesson I learned. And as time went by with my coach, I started to question my decisions. I started to think, why shouldn't I just, become someone that does something that they like? I kind of started to explore arts, which is something I never looked into because I always thought it was a kind of a hobby, And that's what was sold to me, of course, because it doesn't give money or whatever, And so I started to actually have singing lessons. But more than that, I started to really think of a career potentially in music, most of all because I really think artists are not paid enough and they should be paid. And so, the idea of me and my co-founder was really to explore this world of music that's full of people who are underpaid. People don't really make the money that they should be making because it's not fair. And so yeah, that really took me to this where I am now, which is really just trying to make sure people get paid properly. And I'm working on this app, so I'm the CEO of this project. That's a startup we are launching now, and we are basically going to merge users and artists. So you're going to have a platform where you have users voting for artists that they like and artists that are going to try to be discovered. So it's talent discovery plus monetization, because every time someone votes for you, so imagine The Voice, X Factor, American Idol, if you have a concept where it's win-win rather than lose-lose like now, where people vote for artists, they make no money, and the artists make no money, and also the person who votes, they're throwing money away. They're not even supporting the artist. They're not going to get anything in return. We're going to change that, right? So we're going to convert the Voice concept into a concept where it's win-win. So the person who votes gets a recognition for voting, and if the person becomes famous in which they voted, they actually are going to make money out of that, which is, something good. So it's like an investment in an artist. On the other side, the person who gets the vote, they get 60% of the money of the vote, right? So people vote with money, but instead of being an SMS that gets sent to the TV station, whatever, the artist gets 60% of the money, right? So there's going to be a huge incentive for artists to move to the platform, because they're going to monetize in their fan base, going to get discovered by more people, and they can launch their career, right? And so yeah, social media platform like that. And the idea was purely based on the fact that I was in a finance world where I didn't feel like I was generating value for the world or anything. And now I feel like I'm trying to solve a problem, And so that's really a big difference. Of course, crypto is good as a concept, people are actually getting freed in terms of financial system and stuff like that. But still, I didn't feel like I was making a direct impact. And being a CEO, like making the big decisions, and all of that is something that I was eager to do. And I think, I can make a difference now, So that's very interesting to me.
Amazing. That's amazing. And congratulations for finding this,
Thanks a lot.
this steer in the path. Wow, I have so many questions. I'm just going to start chronologically based on what you mentioned. So my first question, I'm curious about what did you study during your PhD in math that is applicable to the business realm that I'm not assuming is applicable? Because I'm trying to understand. I mean, you did this path, you did this journey, and I have many assumptions regarding mathematicians, but most likely they are wrong. So I'm curious, what did you learn in your PhD that is applicable in math? If you can share maybe frameworks or maybe ideas like, I don't know, game theory, like in high level, or even drill down. But this is
definitely, you touched one that's important, of course. Game theory. I learned, I studied machine learning, so it was pretty much a PhD in data science, and machine learning. So that was the main focus. And of course, nowadays, as you can see from artificial intelligence and all these fields, I mean, it's all based on logic and coding. And I did a PhD that was really applied. It wasn't just theoretical. And that was good. So I was always coding. So when I moved to the real world, let's say, I was kind of ready for that, So as a technician, of course. As a leader, it's a bit more subjective, I would say, because honestly, university kind of doesn't really teach you for that. University teaches you about competition, being the best. You need to have the best grades. And that's not good, because in the real world, that's not how it goes. If you don't have skills as a team leader, or just someone who works with people, it's just going to come back at you, right? And the weight that we have on universities on the group work, and stuff like that, it's much smaller than the grades of the exams and all of that, So I think university gets you kind of ready for the not theoretical, like technical world, right? But at the same time, the leadership skills and stuff like that, it's something I was completely missing, And I think working with a coach, psychologist, stuff like that, that's what actually gets you ready for that world, because you kind of release the blocks you have as a person, and these social skills you may miss because of random reasons. And so I would say, the PhD definitely helped me become someone who could work in the best companies in the world and be successful, have all these work methodologies that were quite good. I was used to, studying for exams very early, and being a morning person. And I think, I defined very good routines that I kept for my professional life. But I would say the technical side definitely is more explored than, the leadership side, the skills with people and all of that. So if that's something that I could add, I think these universities are missing a bit of that part, But in terms of technical skills, machine learning, game theory, as you mentioned, I mean, all the data science, the coding part, it was crucial, because I wouldn't be able to handle big data, and big data is everything nowadays. I mean, you can get a job anywhere. So I mean, if I wasn't a leader now, and if I wasn't trying to become someone who, is an entrepreneur, tries to disrupt the world, I would just find a job easily as a data scientist, because like every company needs people to analyze data, in every field you can think of, right? So it's definitely a big, I mean, yeah, I would always incentivize people who want a technical career to study data, in statistics. That's clear,
Is there anything specific that comes to mind that is very obvious to you, but when you speak with other people, you realize that it's not obvious? Like for me, I developed some certain degree of critical thinking, so I realize that many people misunderstand the difference between correlation and causation, for example. And this obviously doesn't happen to people who studied statistics or mathematics. So I'm curious if you have any other examples like this.
I would say more broadly, that's what you're saying. It's logical thinking, right? So I when I did my bachelor, my PhD was very applied. So it was really kind of, coding and stuff. But the bachelor itself was very theoretical. Like I had some subjects that were very, very theoretical. It wasn't like, if you ask me directly, do you use that at work? I would say no. I never used it. It was very theoretical. But when I go and compare myself with someone who studied management or economy or something, I have a capability to learn something new in seconds, while these people have been studying very specific things, so they apply them, but they haven't developed their brain as much. So that's what I think, that people who study mathematics and physics, I would say, I mean, these two specific, bachelors usually are very, very pushy in terms of, making you develop your brain, think better. And so when you go to the management world and people tell you some concepts, you're like, well, that's just sums and subtractions. I mean, that's not. And so I think, the logical thinking. I suffered a bit. I was thinking, why am I studying this if I'm not actually learning anything from my practical life? Because I never wanted to stay in academia. But at the same time, now I look back and looking at the people that stayed with me, they are in very good positions because they just understand things very quickly, And so, yeah, I would say that's really the importance of university in particular, like studying mathematics, like something that's a balance between applied but also theoretical to a point where you learn to think. That's really one of the core capabilities. Problem solving, right? That's one of the most important things. And that's not something you can practice just doing specific exercises. That's it.
For sure. And I also think I studied industrial engineering, and I also I wanted something very practical. And only when I grow up and become a bit older and wiser, I realized all the things that I learned during the degree that I didn't really, be grateful while I was learning. I was sure it was just learning shit. But now looking back, I feel that philosophy or math and physics are like the most important subjects because of the learning and studying of logic, because I think logic is so important. So I would propose thinking of also studying philosophy, which I think is also a very interesting field to understand and sharpen your brain.
For sure. And I think it's quite funny, right? Because when you are growing up, let's call it, there's always this feeling of like, why would you study psychology? Or, because it's psychology or anything, philosophy. It doesn't feel like anything. It doesn't feel like something specific you can apply in your life, right? But then, like right now, I have myself, I remember making fun of that, why would I study psychology? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't teach me anything. Nowadays, it's probably the most important thing in my life. Like, reading about myself, understanding my patterns, my automatic pilots, in a lot of things in life, and trying to change that, And so, like it's just a big turnaround. Of course, for technical jobs, it's a little less clear, I would say. But for people's skills and stuff like that, like you're the person you are is everywhere in this. Like that's what decides everything. And if you are successful, if you are not, if you have the right habits, if you can follow through on what you decide to do, and that's more important than the actual skill. The skills machines will have them. That's it.
Exactly. I agree. Let's talk about, if you don't mind, sharing a bit about the experience with the coach. I'm curious, why did you go? What state you were? What were your expectations? And what surprised you about the process? I realize it's a very general question, but we don't have a lot of time, so we're trying to get the gist out of it.
That's fine, yeah. So I had a colleague that came to me one day in my company, so in blockchain.com. A colleague came to me and he said, "Oh, actually, you look like someone who might enjoy having a coach." And back then, I was just a machine of goals. I was just trying to achieve things. I wasn't thinking. I was an autopilot completely. Like I wasn't questioning my life. I was living for the job, not for myself. I just didn't have a personal life at all. And back then I was like, that could help me being a better leader. That could help me being. But there was a part of my curiosity that I do believe it didn't come from that part of ambition. It came from I knew something was off with my life. And that something had to be fixed, because I was a very curious person. at 6 years old, 7 years old, I was like asking, like, what's life about? Like, what are we doing here? Is there a God? Like, what's the point? And I think that side just kind of goes and gets hidden during these years where you just keep being fed by goals, ambition, everything. And I think that was a part of me that thought I need to question more, And I think I saw that as kind of an escape to start questioning. I would admit that, of course, I was first thinking of ambition and like goals. And when I met him, like, the first couple of months, I was always kind of just trying to be a better leader, just finding ways to become better. But as we started talking more, I realized, if I become a better person, a more kind of free person and stuff, then I will be better. And I can give you very specific examples that apply to my professional life. So I was afraid of talking in public. Like every time I had people in front of me, I would get completely scared. And then when I realized it was all about me being obsessed with validation, not feeling sure of myself, all of these, when you start working this at a personal level, you just start taking this as something very easy. I mean, every time someone tells me now, oh, do you want to talk tomorrow to like 200 people? I'm like, amazing, thanks for the opportunity. Before I would be like, oh my God, what do I do now? How can I escape from this, I would be making a big drama, and now it's just literally thanks for the opportunity. Like the shift is just so big that I cannot even explain, I mean, maybe I get a bit nervous when I start and when I look at people, and sometimes I feel like, oh, am I going to say the right things? But that's the sense of validation of having people in front of you that you are looking at them one by one, thinking, oh my God, what if they don't like me? What if this happens? And this is all about the personal side. I mean, if you work on this and if you work on being sure of yourself, the professional life changes completely. I mean, again, maybe on the technical side it's not as clear, but even then, like creating better habits, not getting dragged into procrastination because of stupid reasons, if you just know what kind of keep conscious of what you're doing, things change completely. I mean, that's my perspective.
Amazing. So do you mind sharing like how did this process look like? Because you gave a great example. I'm sure that many people are familiar with like fear of public speaking, and if you have like a process that worked for you, if you don't mind sharing, so it might be helpful for other people. Also for me, I'm not a big fan of speaking in front of audience, So
no,
but I'm curious what you did. So
yeah, of course, but that's exactly the point, right? If I came up with a short-term solution, if I came up with, every time I see people, I need to imagine whatever. No, I honestly, I don't do anything anymore. I literally just worked on becoming more sure of myself. Like with my coach along the last 3 years, every conversation we had was all about, okay, so you don't feel confident because in your childhood this happened, because you got, somehow bullied in that day, or so we just go back to the past. We just analyze the situations and we think, okay, this is why nowadays you are still not, comfortable with talking in public, because what happens when you are 5, 6, 7 years old, it marks you for life. People don't understand that, but like if you become uncomfortable with yourself, it doesn't go away. And so when you are afraid of talking in public, it's not just for the sake of it. It's not just like, oh, let me maybe take a pill and I'm going to feel better and it's going to be amazing. It's not a short-term fix. It's all about going back to the situations, becoming a better person, becoming a person more sure of yourself. That's it. And so one example I would say is that in my family, it was always very hard to have physical contact. People were not used to hugging and everything, right? From the moment I decided, okay, I'm going to start hugging people and I'm going to go through that path that's not comfortable to me, I'm going to become more sure of myself, because then I'll realize, okay, this is actually normal. It's actually a good thing. When I started to do this, it was uncomfortable in the beginning, right? But it's all about leaving your comfort zone, right? If I never leave my comfort zone, I'm always going to think things are very hard, I have the example, like in Portugal, I would say there's a lot of people, who come from smaller towns that for them is a big step to even go to Lisbon. For people who are in Lisbon, it's a big step to go to London. But if you go through all this process of expanding yourself a bit more, then you realize it's actually easy, right? And when I talk in public nowadays, I'm literally having a conversation with people. That's it. I'm not thinking, what if I get judged? Like, what if people think this of me, Again, like these things don't get away from you, you still have them in a bit, but I don't feel like before, where I was really afraid. When I was 14, that's part of, so it's kind of a snowball, right? When you are 6, you become uncomfortable because of some reason. When you are 14, you fail to speak in public because you are still thinking of that situation when you were 6. And then every time you speak after that, you are always remembering this situation when you were 14 and you just got completely frozen in front of everyone. And so it just feeds itself, right? And so you just need to go back to the root and kind of like, what's the problem? What's the issue? You have people in front of you. Speak, share your feelings, be grateful for the opportunity. That's it. Again, you might say that's easier said than done, obviously, but I cannot give you like a recipe to every time you go to public to talk, because I don't feel like that, like in Dubai, like a couple of months ago, people just told me, do you want to talk tomorrow to these people? And I'm like, amazing, bring it on, I would never feel this way a couple of years ago, I can tell you.
Amazing. That's amazing.
It's all about validation. Most of us have that problem, right? fear
Very
of confrontation, fear of need for validation. All these things are inside of us. Probably 99% of people have it, It's all about how much you admit it to yourself and how much you do to handle it, And I would say leaving your comfort zone as much as possible is really one of the tricks, Every time I made a list of things that in my personal life I didn't have like confidence to do, I started to do them, That's it. And
do you want to share examples?
When I haven't done yet is jumping off a plane. So I have terrible fear of heights, but fears are all psychological in a way. I mean, not all, of course, but these ones in particular, I know something just triggered me when I was younger, and now I'm just fearful. If I do it, I'm like, okay, what can't I do? And in life, this happens a lot. Sometimes you handle a fear that's not related with another, but then you convince yourself, no, I can't do anything I want because I was fearful of this. I had this amazing fear, and I just faced it, And so, yeah, I would say that's really kind of the most important thing. Yeah.
That's great. It's very inspiring as well. So I appreciate you sharing this. I have a fear of height as well to a certain degree, but the irony is that in the army, I served in a special unit in the Israeli army, and it was a specific unit that handles a lot of rappelling from very high buildings and high cliffs.
Yeah.
And I also did parachuting, and I was very anxious and also a lot of fear, but because it was in the army context and you're with uniform, so you don't really question things. You're more of like an autopilot or robotic.
Automaton.
Because you're with the uniform, this gives you like a feeling as if you're a hero to a certain degree. And it's very interesting. I remember like most of the guys on my teams, they were not afraid. They just wanted more and more. And it was like me and a friend of mine that we were always very fearful, but we did the thing in spite of us being anxious. But it's just an example that comes to mind regarding handling fear.
There's the other side, right? I mean, I do think, if you look at the military and like how people sometimes get forced to do things that they're not ready to do, that can create traumas, right? That's
sure.
Also there's also the opposite side of it, right? Unless you are kind of, open to it and you are like, I'm going to do this, If people force you, sometimes it can go in the other direction. You can just create a trauma for life, right? Not for life, because as I said, it's a snowball, but then maybe you can just at some point look back and like, why do I have this? Where did it start? And just analyze it, I mean, that's one of the things about the coaching that I can say. I mean, my coach was extremely important, but I get questioned this so many times, like, how did you find the best coach? And I'm like, that's not really the process. The process is you wanting to change yourself. And then when you find someone, it becomes easier because you are eager to be open to someone, to be challenged. And if you are eager to take that responsibility of changing, then it's not like every coach can be good. But, what I'm saying is their experience is important, but at the same time, if you are not ready for it, there's no way, right? I can really give you an example, like, someone close to me that's been sick for a long time. And when the psychological problem is to a point where you don't want to see reality, you want to just run away from reality, no one can help you. Because imagine going to a psychologist or a psychiatrist and always saying the manipulative version of reality you imagine. This is my life. This is how I'm facing things. This is what's happening in my life. And you are lying because you don't even you don't want to take reality on, right? So you just want to create a story, How can the person in front of you help you, Even if it's a mentor, psychologist, psychiatrist, whoever, right? And that's really the problem of the psychiatric diseases, right? Like people get so much away from reality that it's really hard for someone to look at them and even diagnose what's happening, right? Because they will lie to you, right? They will manipulate you without even wanting that. And I think the most important thing about people growing is really dedication to reality. If you want to see reality in life, then you can do anything. But if you want to create a story in your head, I'm so famous, I'm so successful, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and you don't want to really look at the facts, it's gone, And it's easy to do it with others, diagnosing what's wrong with the other people, but with yourself, that's the hardest thing in life, Definitely.
For sure. Yeah, and I do a little bit of coaching, and I was also mentored by someone, and I realized regarding what you said regarding finding the right coach. So I think like 70% of the coaching is someone objective, holding you accountable, and showing you a mirror in front of your face. Sure, he shouldn't be stupid. He should have some experience, but most of the power comes from someone that, in my opinion, someone that holds you accountable and just gives you like a mirror and feedback on what are your thoughts are and what are your actions.
Yeah, what I usually even say is that having a coach is important, But if we had proper friends in life, we wouldn't even need that, because if you have friends who are actually telling you reality the way it is, and making you face reality, then things would be different, right? Because if you just have friends that just tell you what you want to hear, that want to, just feed each other's egos and say, "Oh, you are amazing. Oh, you are amazing too," and they don't actually say the real things. And of course, it's tougher to have relationships like that, because you want to just be, petted and like, "Oh, you are so amazing," And then that's how people want. People want people close to them who don't challenge them, right? That's really why they find friends who are just, making them live the way they are and not challenging anything in their lives. But when you find friends who tell things to your face, first of all, they are the real friends, even though in that moment doesn't feel like, and you are feeling offended or whatever. And later, also, I think the relationships get much more real, because if you have someone in front of you that they are telling you something, but you don't know if it's the reality or if they are thinking something that they're not telling you, that's not friendship, right? And so I didn't create a long list of friends in the past, because I was in fact very competitive, goal oriented and everything. But now that I really opened up and I'm really kind of trying to find real friends, I also realized a lot of people are surrounded by people that they consider friends, but they're not really, right? Because that's it. It's like 20 years or 15 years of friendship, but friendship to them just means, well, basically tell me what I want to hear and we are friends. That's kind of the condition. And if that's the case, you don't grow from that, right? So the relationship doesn't really help you to become a better person. So yeah, that's what I'm trying to find. People who are honest to your face, and yeah, that could replace a coach if you have the right community around you. That's really the reality to me.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I agree. I think the concept of you're the average of the 5 people you hang out the most with. I think it's a very powerful concept. That is, I mean, it's simplified, obviously, but
Of course,
it's often overlooked, because like when I go back to Israel, I visit my friend and they speak about certain subjects. I see how it changes the way I see the world, and I shift my focus. I mean, Israel is more money oriented. I'm a digital nomad, so we just travel around. And most of the people that we meet are more like, I wouldn't say spiritual, but less concerned of money. And when I go back to visit friends, I'm not saying it's a negative or positive, but I just see how after sitting with them for a beer, I'm very money oriented. And then I go back with the digital nomad friend. We speak about different topics, and we don't discuss money. And then I'm not so worried or thinking about money. So it really changes your perspective.
No, absolutely. I do agree. And I've been noticing that even though sometimes, as I said, the work that we are doing is all about not being biased by people, not believing everything people tell us, not being influenced so easily. At the same time, yeah, if you are surrounded by people who are, like you cannot have the tree in the wrong route, like if you are living in a place where the seed is wrong, then of course you cannot really grow and do much with that, right? Even if you have all the right fundamentals, you still have this core level where the people around you, the time you spend every day, this will drag you into something, of course, like you cannot be that strong that you cannot be influenced by anything, I mean, you can, but if you are, then you should just, decide better maybe, because if you are just surrounded by that environment where you are not challenged and everything, that's something's wrong, I would say. Doesn't need to be like sacrifice all the time and pain all the time, but at least being challenged and, being open to that's really the most important thing, I would say.
For sure. I want to take this topic and transition it towards team building. So you're launching the app very soon. Probably we will publish the podcast after you already launched the app. And I correct me if I'm wrong, but this is your first time as a CEO. So I'm wondering, how does this process look like, shifting from being an employee to building a team? And how did you build the team? Did you have any values in mind? What did you look in the people? Did you have a specific process?
Yeah,
I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, sure, I get you. I think it's work in progress in a way, because I didn't understand a lot of things about life that make it very different now in terms of selection process. Very different, because I used to be focused on technical side exclusively. But I would say, I was already kind of leading a team in blockchain.com. I mean, there was a lot of meetings where I kind of, had to keep under control these goals for the week and stuff like that. But I didn't really have a strong say in who got like hired or not, right? And that's very different. I think hiring the right people is the most important part of everything, right? Like it's all about the people that you pick. As I said before, machines are going to do everything for you, but the people you have, that's really the most important factor, right? And I would say it's still work in progress in terms of, in the interviews, it's still very easy to get, fooled by people who know exactly what to say, and they're not actually the people who are going to deliver what they said. I'm still kind of, getting better at those questions that you ask like, with an intention, people don't really know that, then they give some hint of not being the right person, you are like, okay, you are not the right person. But it's tough because people are also good at manipulating those situations,
Sure.
Unfortunately, with all this goal-oriented and ambitious society we are in, people are a lot like sociopathic, they do whatever they need to do to get to their goals. And so saying the right thing is just an easy thing, But yeah, I'm just trying to develop that skill of, when I have the person in front of me and I see their actions and stuff like that, it's easy. But in half an hour, 1 hour of interview, how can you detect if the person's going to be that or not, right? And nowadays, it's a very big problem to hire, like it's very tough to find a candidate. Sometimes you just hire because you are desperate for a position that you want to fill, but that's the wrong thing to do, I would say. I think you should wait for the right people, because then, of course, if you have someone who is who is problematic, it can really hurt the team, and then they go away. You need to still go again to the process anyway. So I mean, hiring is a very, very important part. Like that for me is something that's clear. I think within the nomad world we have nowadays, people always keep kind of saying, oh, but if you don't give me this, I'm going to go to another job. People just leave like that. So that's becoming very challenging. Just like the remote work, it's much harder for someone who's hiring than from someone who's like an employee, right? Because you just want to do your technical work and you don't want people to bother you. But when you are, employing, even if in theory it's good that people have their freedom, they can be whatever they want, it's also true that you need to kind of keep them accountable. You need to really have some controls. So it's tough. It's a challenging thing. I would say, I still haven't fully nailed the part of the hiring. I think sometimes it's still challenging to find that right personal capabilities and personal skills that you want to see in someone. Of course, being a team person, not being selfish, being just driven by, making sure that things get to the right place without, taking your individual goals in front and just being competitive and everything. Again, the opposite probably of what university taught me, but at the same time, I think it's quite clear what I want. It's not as clear how I can get to those people without making mistakes and without having a failure rate of a big percentage of that. But yeah, I think it's a big challenge. I like to put everything in numbers and logically to just analyze and put everything in boxes and be very numerical. But at the same time, some things are not really measurable in that sense. Of course, you want to make it quantifiable as much as possible. But there's also part of the personal skills that you just need to learn how to detect, and it's intuition sometimes,
For sure. Interesting that you mentioned intuition, because I'm thinking a lot about the definition of intuition. And there is a very nice lecture by Terence McKenna. Do you know him? He's like a guru of psychedelics. He's a very famous speaker that speaks about. He died in the end of the 90s. He's a very interesting thinker. He's a big promoter of psychedelics, and he has a very interesting lecture about intuition and the importance of intuition, and the fact that some people overlook intuition or define intuition as something very feminine or something that can be, overlooked because it's not based on data. But he says the opposite, that intuition is encapsulated of data, but some things, as you said, are not quantifiable, but they have derivatives in your intuition. So this is a very just interesting.
That's a whole topic in itself. I mean, I don't know that person, to be honest, but I've been studying that also, psychedelics. I have this kind of idea of trying them just because of the impact that people say that it creates. Because, for example, if I want to look at my childhood to understand my problems nowadays and to understand how things got wrong and how I have this bias in my head or something, when you are in your logical thinking and when you are in the day-to-day, sometimes you don't really access the creativity because you are kind of blocked, by this logical thinking and methodical path, and so psychedelics might be a good way to help with that and to just go back and unlock these things. Sure. That's why you have these bad trips, because sometimes you unlock something that you are afraid of and you're like, oh my God, what's this? But I think if you are actually doing it properly and if you are, of course, not doing it by yourself and randomly, it could be interesting to just kind of explore some boxes that have been closed by yourself and that you don't want to think about, and actually potentially unlock something that you don't know about, right? And that intuition question that you asked, it's also very interesting. I do agree. All my life, I thought it's all about numbers. It's all about data. Like, how can people tell me something that I don't know with data? Data is like infinite, so I can just look at data and know everything, right? On the other hand, I do agree with you that what you said, that if you have a good system and you have all this data and you have all this information, maybe you can direct yourself better and you can actually make better decisions that are based on data somehow. But intuition, you need to also unleash it somehow, because if you create the right system to have the proper intuition, then it's good. If you have this data mind data-oriented mind, and if you are very logical, I do think it's a good thing. But then you need to use that and allow the creativity to also exist. Because in my life, that was the problem in general. I was someone who loved music, who loved to sing. I would never imagine myself having actually singing lessons. And now, if I sing, sometimes it goes, my brain just sees things that it's not seeing, And when I'm being logical, sometimes, I'm being so methodical that I don't have the space for that, For example, with the drinking, it's the same. Sometimes drinking makes you kind of stop some parts of the brain that allow you to focus on creativity a bit more, And so if you can create that without drinking and just be that person in general, that's a good thing. And I think it's possible that psychedelics, for example, create that system where you can unlock these things and then be that person day to day, Ideally, you want to have this side of drinking, of creativity and being less, obsessed with, data and stuff. But at the same time, you also want to kind of keep that logical thinking, obviously, because you want the balance of the two. But I would have to say I learned the hard way that just data, it's not enough. Intuition is very, very important. And I've seen that in many examples in my life. I mean, with my co-founder, he's very logical. He's very intuitive. I'm very logical. Sometimes you clash, but you need these people around you because then there's a complement. You cannot just surround yourself by data-driven people and be obsessed with that because you are missing a whole part of the world, right? My wife, my co-founder, both of them have this very strong intuition based on creativity and being artistic people. And I used to make fun of it, like, I mean, what can you teach me that I don't find with data? And now I'm like, well, shut up, Francisco, you are wrong.
For sure.
And I get that, and I understand it. I see it. That's kind of part of the things that I think are important about what I've achieved. It's like I'm able to look at something that I don't understand, but still give it that emphasis of like, maybe I don't understand, but it's real. I cannot just go and say I don't understand, so it's wrong. I mean, I used to do this much more. Now I always look at something like creativity and I'm like, well, if these people achieve these and if they got to these conclusions, maybe there's something there that I'm just missing, right? So I'm trying to develop it a bit more. I don't think that is enough. And I think it's a good way to start, but it cannot be all your life, just being logical, being a machine, because then we are just saying that machines could replace us because we don't add anything, right? Data is computers can do data. That's it.
For sure. There's a lot of things that come to mind based on what you said, but basically what he said during the lecture is even if you take our conversation, how can you quantify the whole conversation? How, I mean, we are two heads in a square, of a Zoom. So how can you quantify, So, but there is some intuition. You have some sort of a way you perceived me, and I perceive you in some sort of way. But I don't know how to give it like degrees on a scale from 1 to 10 based on communication skills, positivity. It's very hard to quantify everything, and this is where intuition, roles comes in. And I would suggest if you're interested in psychedelics, so just read his stuff because he's amazing. He has very great lectures. I did only once a psychedelic. I consumed the psychedelic mushroom. It was like 3 years ago. It was very, very interesting and empowering, but very hard as well. So it's not something that I would like to do again soon. But I consider it a very positive thing, but it was very challenging as well. So for anything, I also have a podcast in Hebrew, and I actually interviewed someone that he has a podcast about psychedelics. And what he said, and was interesting in my opinion, so he said he doesn't suggest people do psychedelics, and the default is you shouldn't do psychedelics unless you go through the journey and decide you should do. It's not the other way around.
Exactly. I do understand it. And I think that's what I was saying. I think if you start it without a goal, without actually knowing, and that's, I in the end, I seem like I'm sounding a bit like I am saying that there's a lot that's not data in the world, but honestly, I do think a big part of things like the routines, creating the right habits, quantifying things, it helps you a lot with efficiency, right? It makes you a lot better, then allows you to unleash also the intuition if you wanted to, right? The problem is sometimes you are so obsessed with data that you don't leave space for anything else. But if you are good with data, you organize your life, you make decisions that are automated because some things are just automated. It's easy to optimize, right? But then if you don't assume that there's intuition side, that's bad. But if you allow your intuition, because you release so much space because of all the automations you have in your life, then there might be the perfect compromise, right? And I do think that. I just think I've been so obsessed with data that I'm trying to push myself in the other direction a bit also.
Awesome. You mentioned automation. So what type of automations do you have in your life that are you find are very valuable?
I would say that habits are very important,
Mm-hmm.
Human habits are easy to create, I think if you just decide to do something, you can change very quickly, I mean, I decided to start meditation. I said to myself, I'm going to do it every day. When it was just a 2 months old or 3 months old habit, I stopped easily. And when I stopped 1, 2, 3 days, I just stopped. But when I actually managed to do like 5, 6 months of it, it became something so natural that I would even struggle not to do it, because so if you define a habit, if you plan properly, you say, I want this habit in my life, and then you automate it and you just make sure that you never miss it, then it just becomes a habit for you, right? Whatever you didn't do for 30 years, you can still fix it. Of course, there's a lot of studies about atomic habits, all these books about habits that tell you, of course, that you can change your path in your brain and you can create new habits. It's challenging, of course. And the more time you go in your life without doing them, the worse. But if you start creating new habits, you can make them happen, right? And if you plan and you think, okay, I really want this habit, you can just make it happen, right? And if you have the motivation because you know what's behind it, it's a good way to start it, of course. But later it becomes automatic. It's a bit like driving. I mean, when you start driving, it's so hard not to think of everything. Oh my God, the mirror, oh, whatever. Nowadays, if you have done it for years, are you going to even consider it? It's like riding a bike, I guess, It's so automatic that you don't need to think, oh my God, I need to do this step. No, the step is there. That's it. You do it. That's over. So yeah, I think creating good habits in your life, it's very important, like these routines, not too much again, because I'm very obsessed with my calendar, having everything in place. But yeah, having a level of that's sustainable and that, makes you more organized so that you can release yourself to, because imagine every day in your life thinking of everything you do. If every step you take, you need to, okay, do I do this? Do I not? You need to plan, make the habits, and then that's it. Make it automatic. Otherwise, it's a waste of time in a way.
Sure. And let's transition back to the products that you're building. Did you incorporate into the app anything regarding like the stickiness or gamification? Because I took a look at your website. It looks amazing, and I can't wait to try the app already. And it seems that you put a lot of thought into this, like also the mechanics, also the economy. Do you mind sharing a bit about what were like the guidelines or the most important things to you when building the app?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, one very important thing is the people you work with, of course, as you said. In terms of the app itself, I mean, there's parts that you just have to do, be careful with the content that gets uploaded, make sure that, people cannot upload things that are, completely out of this world. And of course, there's a lot of content that a couple years ago would be fine to publish, but nowadays people are more mindful about things. And I do think it's good, that you don't allow people to just submit things that can be harmful for others, for vulnerable people. Nowadays you have all these, scams going on and stuff, and so many vulnerable people with access to internet, but you can just fall for things very quickly. And so that's definitely a focus for me, and like having a strong filter on the content that gets uploaded. At the same time, yeah, of course, if we find amazing talent and if we find artists that are very good, we want them with us, because we want them to be successful, to be discovered, to make money straight away. That's one of the important parts about the app. Artists make money straight away. It's not about waiting for months for the label to pay them, blah, blah, blah. And so, yeah, it's really about that mission to change the world of music to the better, and allowing a common person to vote for someone early and to actually make money out of investing in someone early, right? Because nowadays, it's not how it goes, Labels take someone and then they make money with that artist. But a common person like me, if I find someone amazing day one, I'm not going to get anything from that, apart from feeling good about myself because I knew they were going to be famous. And so, yeah, I mean, this strong impact side is really the main focus. We don't want to just monetize and make money out of something that doesn't have impact in the world. So it's more about the impact. And of course, you need to have a sustainable business. So of course, there's a business model and there's a lot of revenue to be made. But most of all, we created this based on the fact that artists need a platform to show their talents, monetizing properly, living from their work rather than having to do other works just to, fuel their careers and to have money to keep going. And so, yeah, that's really the most important part. And we are going to be live end of April. So yeah, that's the plan. Yeah.
Do you mind like clarifying how does the flow look like? So let's say I'm an artist. I get it. I open a profile and I start to upload, my songs or my music.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, how does exactly the voting look like? Do I get some sort of a token that is dedicated for the artist? How does this work?
Yeah, that's it. So you have a user or artist profile, right? If you open the user profile, you can see content. User experience is similar to TikTok. So you just swipe, you see different people singing. For the artist himself, he goes, checks terms and conditions, of course. Then once he starts in the app, he can just submit his content. There's different competitions happening, right? So it's not like The Voice or X Factor where you have one season and that's it. We'll have rock competition, pop competition, because we don't want to mix everyone, right? I don't really like the concept of American Got Talent where you can compare a magician to a singer. I mean, how can you do that, you know? So if you have rock, pop, all different categories, people can apply their video to whatever they want, right? So you have competitions of different styles. And then, of course, it's going to be tailored also for people who are watching. You know, if you like rock a bit more, you're going to be suggested to look at the rock competitions. And so, yeah, it's going to be tailored for the persons individually who are watching. But for the artist, he submits the content, and then, yeah, he's in the competition. The competition shows there the details and everything. You have a leaderboard. And every time you get in the top X, you move to the next round. So if you are one of the most voted people, you keep going to the next rounds. So it's a bit like The Voice, yeah, in that sense, where every week people get eliminated based on the votes of people. And so, yeah, you keep progressing, and then, yeah, you have a final in the end, and we all have a time span of like, you know, a week to start with, you know, for each round. But then we're going to make it tighter because the more people we have voting, the tighter you want to make it, so it gets more engaging also. And then that's the plan, you know. Then the artist just checks the votes he gets money for that. But everything's going to be, you deposit dollars or whatever with your credit card, you get some in-app credits to vote for the artist, and then you vote with those credits, but then it gets converted directly into money from the artist's perspective. Yeah, so it just needs to withdraw to the bank account. Simple.
Nice. Amazing.
And you get it immediately. Yeah, every time someone votes for you, you get money to withdraw. Simple. You know, you can check your profile. Oh, I have this much money. Amazing. It's really different from what artists are facing nowadays. That I can tell you.
That's amazing. That sounds like a very important disruption. And I wish you best of luck. I'm assuming that we will publish it after the app is live already. So where can people find out more about the app? Or
so the app is called Stage. So the website is stage.community. And yeah, I mean, the app's going to be in the App Store quite soon. You know, it's going to be in iOS to start with, then we're going to expand later, but it's going to be for iPhones in the first version, the MVP. But yeah, it should be in the App Store very soon, you know. So yeah, let's see compared to the date of the release of the episode. But yeah, it should be in the end of April that we are planning to have it. Yeah.
Awesome, great. Thank you so much for this, Go. It's been a lot of pleasure. Is there anything that you would like to share or anything that we didn't discuss that you wanted to discuss today?
Honestly, like in my life, I've been focused on ambition, goals, achieving things. And that I told you in the beginning before we even recorded, I think the most important part about life, even if you have the goals in mind, don't just, you know, do every step thinking obsessively about them. Just try to live a bit more, be more in the present, be mindful, conscious. That's really kind of part of the work I've been doing. And things will just come naturally, but you just need to keep pushing, create the right routines, but not be obsessed. Just stay a person, you know, not a machine. And yeah, and I think it's the most important. And dedication to reality is important to really grow and become the best version of yourself you can be. That's really the most important part, I would say.
Awesome, great. And this is a great way to finish a great episode. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Take care.
Hi guys, this is Yaron again. Just a few more things before you take off. Number one, if you want to learn more about e-commerce and marketing, make sure you check out our YouTube channel, which is called EcomXFactor Official. Number two, check out our Facebook group, which is called EcomXFactor Marketing and E-commerce Mastermind. This is a great place to ask questions and connect with other business owners. And last but not least, if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to share it with your friends and colleagues. Plus, leave a review at your favorite podcast app.